Imagine a life without the game of basketball. Thanks to Dr. James Naismith and decades of perfecting the sport, basketball is an American pastime. Although we might not all play basketball, we all know what the game is. I'm sure you could all at least name one player. Kevin Durant, LeBron James, and Michael Jordan, just to name a few. Basketball is a sport you have to work at to get better. Just like Michael Jordan said, I missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I lost almost 300 games, and 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I failed over and over and over in my life, and that's why I succeed. Today, I'm going to talk about the history of basketball, the changes through the years, and the rules. I think it's pretty safe to say everybody knows the sport basketball, whether you play it, watch it on TV, or just even knowing what it is. There's one thing that not everybody knows about basketball, and that is basketball's history. Basketball was invented by Dr. James Naismith. Naismith was originally from Canada. He established the game of basketball at the University of Kansas. Dr. James Naismith spent 2 weeks searching for new indoor athletic activities for his physical education class, mostly full of rowdy boys, during the cold winter months. Naismith tried many activities, including indoor adaptations to soccer, lacrosse, and football, but it only led to people getting injured. He was getting disappointed that he couldn't find a sport that met all the conditions, so he decided to invent his own. According to hooptactics.com, on December 21st, 1891, Naismith published rules for a new game using 5 basic ideas and 13 rules. Using a soccer ball and 2 peach-colored baskets, he took his class of 18 to play 9 versus 9. So, what I was even wondering, why did they call it basketball? Before they had a name, basketball as the name of the sport, someone suggested to name it the Naismith game. Naismith didn't like the idea of someone just calling it his name. So Naismith said, "We have a ball and a basket. Why don't we call it basketball?" Now that you know the history of basketball, we should explore the changes through the years. There have been many changes in the baskets, balls, rules, and numbers of players. Originally, there was no rule on how many players could be on the court. The idea was the game could be played with any number of players. However, that didn't work out too well. Early games were usually played by 9 players on each team. The reason was that there were 18 students in Naismith's class. In 1897, 5 players became the mandatory team size. At the start of the sport, players were not allowed to re-enter the game. The rule was changed in 1920 to allow the player to re-enter the game once. By 1945, the rule finally changed to permit the player to return to the game unlimited number of times. Did you know that even the baskets were changed over the years? When the game was first invented, the game was played with peach-colored baskets and 18-inch boxes that hung from the balconies of the indoor facilities. The highest was established to be 10 feet, which is today's standard height. The peach baskets and boxes were slowed down the game because the ball had to be retrieved after every shot. In 1892, the boxes and baskets were replaced by heavy woven wire rims. Then a year later, the cast iron rims were made and used. Open-ended nylon nets were finally improved in 1912. Like I said earlier, the first basketball games were played with the soccer balls, but they were proved to be not working so well for dribbling and ball handling. In 1894, Basketball Manufacturing Company produced the first manufactured basketballs. Because of their lace and not being able to maintain their shape, the early brown leather balls were really hard to dribble. Basketballs were redesigned to have a more bounce effect in 1929. They created them to be bigger, lighter, and easier to handle. Also, coaching during the game was not allowed until 1949. Before this time, no coaching was allowed during the game, and not even during a timeout. The only time you could have a coach is during halftime. The beginning years of basketball, only men could play. Women's basketball was introduced in 1893. Male spectators were not allowed since it was socially unacceptable at the time. The most important event that occurred in the women's basketball was equalizing men and women's sport. Today, women's basketball is played with the same enthusiasm and intensity as the men's basketball. Now that I've told you some of the changes through the years, let's go review some of the rules. When the game was first invented, there were only 13 rules. Talking high school rules, now there are 10 important rules, plus a lot of articles and subsections. According to NFHS.org, 9 out of 13 rules of basketball that Naismith used are still used today. Basketball rules are to make the game more fluid, up-tempo, and entertaining. Every year, there are a few rules that change, but the basic 10 rules will stay intact, and 9 out of those 10 are still being used from the start of basketball. It has survived 123 years and counting. How many things do you know that have lasted this long? Today, I've informed you about the history of basketball, the changes through the years, and the rules. I hope that today I have answered some questions that you've ever had about basketball. So, when you don't have anything to do during the day, go shoot some hoops.